Come closer. Listen. There is a sound you have tried to ignore. The faint creak from an empty hallway. The low hum behind a closed door. The whisper on the edge of the wind. You tell yourself it is nothing. The house settling. A trick of the mind. But deep down, you know the truth. Something is wrong. The familiar spaces of your world are beginning to bend. They are starting to remember things that should have been forgotten. Tonight, we will not look away from that feeling. We will lean into the darkness in the corners of ordinary life. We will explore when the world you know becomes something else entirely. These are not grand tales of distant monsters or ancient curses. They are small, quiet horrors. That could happen to anyone. That could be happening right now, just beyond the light of your screen. They begin when you are all alone. I will share 3 stories with you. Each one is a reminder, a warning. First, a sound captured on a phone, a final message that holds more than just a voice. Second, a piece of furniture that does not want to be empty, a wardrobe that learns to speak. Third, a journey that has no end, a car ride into a night that refuses to let go. These are real accounts of the mundane becoming monstrous. Turn down the lights, settle in, but do not get too comfortable. The stories I will tell are true. They wait in the silence between heartbeats. They want you to listen closely. They want you to know you are never truly alone. The only question, what is listening with you? I advise you, do not listen to this alone. The darkness has ears, and it is always, always listening. It began on an ordinary Tuesday evening, just after 10 o'clock. The city outside was a distant hum of traffic. Sirens cut through the night, a familiar soundtrack to her small, quiet life. Her name was Clara, alone in her 4th-floor apartment. The day had been long, filled with the usual tasks. Deadlines loomed. Now she was unwinding, preparing for bed. The lights were low. A single lamp cast a soft yellow glow across the living room. She decided to send a voice note to her sister, a nightly ritual that had replaced their late-night calls. A small comfort, a way to close the day with a familiar voice. She pressed the record button on her phone. Her voice was calm, a little tired. She spoke about her day at work, a funny email she had received, her plans for the weekend. The message was simple, mundane. She described the new book she was reading, the rain that had streaked the windows earlier that afternoon. Nothing in her tone suggested fear. Nothing hinted at the shift that was about to occur. But as she spoke, a subtle change began. Her pace slowed. A pause, a small hesitation between words. She mentioned a noise she'd heard earlier, dismissing it as the old building groaning. Pipes in the walls clanked and hissed. Floorboards above creaked. These were the normal sounds of her home, the sounds she'd grown used to. She laughed it off, a quiet, breathy sound that didn't reach her eyes. The recording captured this shift, the exact moment her comfort began to fray. The ordinary was starting to feel wrong. Her voice, once steady, carried a new weight. She talked about her book, but the subject felt distant. Her focus drifted. It was drawn to the silence of her apartment, heavy, occupied. She was listening for something. She did not know what it was, but some primal instinct had been triggered. Her voice grew more tense. "It's happening again," she whispered into the phone. The subject of her message had changed completely. She was no longer talking about her week. She was talking about the footsteps. They were soft, she explained, almost too quiet to hear. A slow, shuffling sound from the hallway outside her door. They did not belong to any of her neighbors. She knew their gates. Mrs. Gable next door had a quick, tapping walk. The student upstairs had a heavy, thudding tread. These footsteps were different. They were patient, measured. She described how they would start at the far end of the hall, by the elevators, and slowly make their way toward her door. They would stop right outside, so close she could almost feel the presence on the other side of the wood. There would be a long, unnerving silence. No knock, no doorbell. just the quiet weight of someone standing there, waiting. Then, after several minutes that felt like hours, the footsteps would shuffle away again, retreating back toward the elevators. It had been happening for 3 nights in a row. Each time, the silence outside her door lasted a little longer. "I'm probably just imagining it," she said, her voice a fragile attempt at self-reassurance. But the recording captured the lie. She confessed that she had stopped looking through the peephole. The first night, she had peered through and seen nothing but the empty, dimly lit corridor. Yet she could hear the shuffling, feel the presence. The emptiness was somehow more terrifying than seeing someone there. It meant that what she was hearing was either not real, or it was something that did not need to be seen to be present. The footsteps had started again while she was recording. They were getting closer. This is where the recording becomes truly disturbing. As Clara whispered into the phone, another sound emerged. It was almost imperceptible at first. A low, guttural murmur. It was not the building's pipes. It was not the hum of the refrigerator. It was a voice. A second voice, deep and off-key, moving with a strange, discordant rhythm that didn't match Clara's panicked speech. A distorted hum. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. Her own voice faltered. "Did you hear that?" she asked. The recording captured her sharp intake of breath and the sudden, stifling silence. In that silence, the other voice became clearer. It wasn't speaking words. It was making a sound. A low, resonant vibration, ancient and wrong. A throat trying to form a forgotten word. Panic bled into her whisper. "It's in here," she breathed. "It's in the apartment with me." Then, a new noise. A sharp, distinct click from the hallway. The linen closet door clicked and began to open. Then another click. The bathroom door. One by one, doors in her home unlatching. The living room lights began to flicker. The lamp died. The lamp flared back in a sick, strobing pulse. The darkness between flashes felt absolute. The second voice grew louder, humming now with a faint, wet clicking, like saliva. Clara stopped speaking. The recording filled with her ragged, terrified breathing and the sounds of her home turning against her. Her breathing became the only narration, a frantic, shuffling retreat. She was backing away from something. Her back hit a wall. A small, choked sob escaped her lips. The humming from the second voice was constant now. The flickering lamp finally gave out, relieved only by the cold, pale light of her phone's screen. In a trembling, broken whisper, she described what she was seeing. Across the room, there was a large, ornate mirror hanging on the wall. In the faint light of her phone, she could see that the surface was no longer clear. A thick, gray fog was swirling across the glass. It was not dissipating. It was growing thicker. It was a fog that came from within the glass itself. She said there were shapes moving within the fog. They suggested limbs, a torso, a head that was tilted at an impossible angle. The humming grew louder when she looked at it, as if the mirror was the source of the sound. The air grew cold, a damp chill that clung to her skin. The final words on the recording are fragmented. "It's coming out," she gasped. "The face in the—" Her sentence was cut off by a sudden, sharp, static crackle. It was the sound of the phone hitting the floor. The recording continued for 3 more seconds. It captured the low, guttural hum. And then another sound. A soft, wet, tearing noise. Then silence. The voice note ended. The file was exactly 5 minutes and 32 seconds long. A final, horrifying document of her last moments. The official investigation that followed found nothing. Police reports listed no signs of forced entry. The front door was locked from the inside. She had simply vanished from inside a locked room, leaving behind nothing but her phone on the floor. But she did remember something from the night before. A figure standing in the hallway, its form long and distorted in the dim hall light. When she blinked, it was gone. The building's security cameras were checked. The camera covering the fourth-floor hallway. At exactly 10:17 p.m., the camera's feed dissolved into a screen of rolling static. This is the central horror of Clara's story. It is not about a physical intruder. It is about a presence that does not need a door. Forensic audio analysts examined the recording. Beneath the hum was the sound of a voice. The hidden sound that followed, once amplified, was a single, drawn-out guttural word. It sounded like, "Here." It was not an attack, it was a response. Clara's sister refused to let the case go cold. The sister claimed she could still feel something, a cold spot by the wall where the mirror used to hang. New tenants whisper of a voice note that plays by itself in empty rooms, a faint, tinny recording of a woman's panicked breaths, a low, humming answer that follows. The last voice note keeps playing, a permanent scar on the air, a warning that some sounds, once recorded, can never be erased. In a tall, narrow Victorian house in the north of England, the horror began not with a scream, but with a child's whisper. The family, a young couple named Liam and Sarah, and their 6-year-old daughter Lily, had lived there for less than a year. It was Lily who first spoke of the voice. She told her parents that her wardrobe talked to her at night. It was a massive dark wood piece of furniture that had come with the house, too heavy and imposing to move. Liam and Sarah dismissed it, as most parents would. It was an active imagination, a new imaginary friend. The whispers, Lily explained, were soft, like rustling leaves. The wardrobe would ask her simple questions. It asked her name. It asked if she was cold. It asked if she was alone. But as the weeks passed, Lily's stories began to take on a more unsettling quality. The wardrobe stopped asking questions and started telling her things. It told her it was lonely. It told her it was hungry. Then the physical manifestations started. Soft, muffled knocks would echo from within the wardrobe. Liam would get up to check, revealing nothing but his daughter's neatly hung clothes. One morning, Sarah found the wardrobe door wide open. Inside the wardrobe, something was wrong. They had been moved, arranged on the floor in a crude, vaguely human shape. It looked like a child's clumsy attempt to build a scarecrow. But Lily had not woken up. After finding the clothes arranged on the floor, Liam and Sarah's unease curdled into genuine fear. They bought a small, motion-activated night vision camera and placed it on a bookshelf. The first few nights, the footage showed nothing. Just the silent, grainy image of Lily sleeping peacefully in her bed. But on the fourth night, the camera recorded something. At 3:17 in the morning, the wardrobe door, which was firmly closed, begins to swing open. Then, the most chilling part. Lily sits up in her bed. Her eyes are wide open but unfocused, as if she is still asleep. She turns her head toward the wardrobe and begins to speak.
Her voice, however, is not her own. "Is the little bird awake?" the older voice asked, coming from Lily's mouth.
Then Lily's expression changed, and she answered in her own small voice, "Yes, I'm awake."
The footage shows a conversation between two distinct voices. The older voice asked questions Lily could not know the answers to. Old street names, a ship called the Crimson Pearl, a woman named Eleanor.
The camera recorded the impossible dialogue for nearly 10 minutes before Lily lay back down and the wardrobe door swung silently shut. The footage from the camera shattered the family's denial. The image of her daughter speaking with that dry, ancient voice was burned into her memory. Her attempts to find a logical answer only led her deeper into the house's unsettling history. She found a brief mention of the previous family. They had left in a hurry. A few days later, she found something on the wardrobe floor, a small yellowed newspaper clipping. It hadn't been there before. The article was dated 1912. It told the brief, sad story of a lodger, a traveling bookseller, had vanished without a trace. The clipping smelled faintly of old paper and dried flowers. The wardrobe began to demand things. It started with one shoe. In the morning, the shoe was gone. A week later, the wardrobe asked for a glass of water. The next day, the glass was empty. Each concession they made seemed to make the entity stronger. Lily was fading. The family watched their daughter being slowly overwritten. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night. They rushed out of their bedroom to find an impossible scene. The wardrobe, in the middle of the upstairs hall, dragged from Lily's room, gouging the wooden floor. Lily stood beside it, eyes wide and vacant. Fear gave way to a primal need to protect their child. They had to get the wardrobe out. It took all their strength, wrestled it through the front door, left it on the curb outside. They locked the door, bolted it. Just before sunrise, a slow, familiar scraping began. Liam peered through the curtains. The wardrobe was moving, back toward the house. It reached the front door and stopped. A low hum emanated from it. It knew it would be let back in. The story, as it was told to me, ends there. The house was sold again, quickly and quietly. But the wardrobe remains. New residents speak of strange occurrences. Sometimes, late at night, an ornate coat hook on its door has been seen turning slowly, unscrewing itself, as if an unseen hand is trying to open the door from the inside. The night was a vast, cold emptiness. A late-night rideshare driver, a man named Thomas, was making his final run. He was tired, looking forward to the warmth of his bed. That is when he saw the figure. It was standing on the gravel shoulder, miles from the nearest town. No one should have been out there. Thomas slowed his car. As he pulled over, his headlights illuminated the passenger, bundled in a heavy, dark coat. They carried no luggage, no bag. Thomas unlocked the doors. The figure got in, settling into the back seat without a word.
"Where are you headed?" Thomas asked, his voice calm, professional.
The passenger remained silent. Finally, a voice came from the back, quiet and unnervingly flat. "Just drive," it said.
Thomas felt a prickle of anxiety, but he felt a strange compulsion to obey. He put the car in drive and pulled back onto the empty highway. As he drove, an uncomfortable silence filled the car. It felt watchful, attentive. He drove on. The radio swelled with harsh static, then died. The dashboard clock froze at 2:37 a.m. He glanced in the rearview mirror. Condensation fogged the rear window. The passenger's face had too many reflections. A brief, nauseating glimpse of something that defied geometry. He drove for what felt like 10 minutes, passing a split oak tree by the road. A feeling of profound disorientation began to settle over him. He felt sealed inside this moving metal box with his silent passenger. Then he saw it again, up ahead on the right. The same split oak tree. He had been driving in a straight line, yet he had somehow looped back. A cold dread washed over him. He was trapped. The landscape never changed. He turned onto a dirt track. It curved and dumped him back on the highway behind the oak. The faint, rhythmic click of the forgotten turn signal was the only sound, a maddening counterpoint to the silence in the back seat. He was on a ride that had no end. Panic finally overwhelmed compulsion. Thomas slammed on the brakes. He turned in his seat. The back seat was empty. The door was ajar. His eyes fell on the back seat, a small white piece of paper. He unfolded it with profound dread. 4 words in stark, blocky script. It read, "You were almost home." Desperate, he grabbed his phone. No signal. He navigated to the emergency dispatch button. After a moment of static, the call connected.
A voice came through the speaker. "Dispatch," it said. It was the same voice, flat, quiet, emotionless. Thomas's blood ran cold.
The line went dead. He dropped the phone, truly alone, stranded on a road that did not exist. The engine he hadn't turned off sputtered and died. He watched as the keys turned by themselves, restarting the car. The ride was not over. The ride would never be over. And so, The quiet returns. The stories are over. But the feeling they leave behind lingers, doesn't it? We have traveled from a sealed apartment in America to a haunted Victorian home in the UK, and finally, down a desolate Canadian highway that leads nowhere. The ordinary places we inhabit are not as empty as we think. Our homes, our cars, the very air around us, they have a memory, and sometimes they remember things that are hungry and lonely and wrong. A voice note becomes a final testament. A piece of furniture becomes a vessel for a lost soul. A late-night drive becomes an eternal loop. The horror is in the small, familiar things that turn against us. A locked door, a familiar road, cannot protect you when the threat itself comes from within. You may find yourself glancing at the dark corners of your own room, at the phone on your bedside table, at the wardrobe door you thought you closed. You may wonder if something is watching, listening from those shadows. And perhaps it is. Perhaps I am. The darkness has ears, and now it knows you have been listening.